Okay, Chapter 2, Selections. So in this chapter, we're going to look at some of the many different ways that we can make selections, and we'll also look at when certain selection tools might be more useful to use than some of the other ones. So like the kind of selections we're going to make today, we're going to isolate this dog out from his background, get this nice kind of fur texture on here. We're also going to isolate out these sunglasses and then merge it with another selection. So we have a very nice appearance for the fur. We're going to make a perfect circle selection for our ball. We're going to add this doggo. We're going to make a bordering selection for our whole canvas. And we're going to make a bordering selection for our text, all using different methods. While we're making those selections, we're going to explore the free transform tool. And we're also going to look at different ways of adding images to our canvas. So like all of these will be added in a different way. So we can kind of look at some of those uses. Now, chances are you're just going to copy, paste, or file, place, and embed for the most part. But it's still good to know all the different kinds of ways. So let's go ahead and close this demo file. And let's grab our start file. Now to get to your start file, just go to Open, navigate through wherever your file saved, and we're going to grab Chapter 2, Start. In the start file, we can see that we have a text layer and we have a background image layer. When we're working in this chapter, make sure that you have the right layer active. Otherwise, stuff will be a little bit goofy, and then always double check your layer order as we're going. So what we want to do is we want to make a selection of this text and then expand that selection and fill it using a gradient. Now we actually could do something pretty similar to what we're going to do by coming down to the FX menu and doing it as a stroke, which would be a layer style. We'll actually do that in later chapters, but it's good to know how to do both methods of adding a border background around a text, because sometimes you want to apply certain kinds of effects to it that you can only apply to a layer, but you couldn't apply to a layer style. Anyway, let's go ahead and make our first selection. To make our first selection, we're going to hold down the Command or Control key on our keyboard and mouse over the layer thumbnail or preview over on our layer panel. The layer thumbnail or preview in this case is going to be this T, or it's going to be this image. And if I stop holding down the Command Control key, you can see that I've got a normal hand. And when I hold it down, I get a little box next to my hand that looks a lot like the marquee selection tool. This is telling me that I can now click to turn that into a selection. And so if I click on this text layer, and the only thing that's in it is this text, so that's what becomes selected. So I'll Command click or Control click on the T. We can see now that I have an active selection by those little marching ants running around my letters, and I'm going to transform it by coming up to Select, Modify, and Expand. Then I'll type in 25 for my size, and I'll click OK. We can see now that the selection has moved away from the text. It has gotten a little bit bigger. Next, we want to add a gradient fill to this. So again, the selection says you are only working here. So when I apply a gradient here in a minute, it will only go into the area inside my selection. So I'll hit G for gradient tool, or click on the gradient tool over here on the far left. To get the colors that I'm using, you'll come up to the tool option bar and click on the drop down. And it's not in pinks, it's actually in oranges. And it's the second to last option in oranges. Then to draw my gradient, I'll click roughly on the left side of my image and I'll drag over. And as I'm dragging, we can see that the line does not want to be straight. If I hold down the Shift key, it will snap that line perfectly straight and make my life a little bit easier. So I'm dragging from side to side and I'll release. Notice that this made a new layer over here in my layers panel. So when I have an active selection, quite a few tools will convert that into a layer mask. Some won't. Sometimes you'll have to make a new layer by clicking the new layer button, but some tools will automatically convert that to a layer mask. Now, just like in Chapter 1, where we couldn't see our figure when we added our background, we need to change the layer order to move the text to be above its background. So I'll click and drag on the T up to be above the text, and now it is correctly ordered, so I now have a nice, attractive background behind my text. Okay, let's add our first dog to the image. To add my first dog, I'm going to come up to File, and I'm going to go to, are we doing File Place on this one? Yeah, we're going to do File Place Embedded. So we're going to File, Place Embedded, and we're going to go to, I think it's just Happy Dog. Yeah, Happy Dog, where are you? Happy Dog. And I'll just click Place. Now, when I'm clicking place, it comes in too small because the resolution on this is pretty low. And we're going to be a little bit naughty, and we're going to increase the size of this to make it bigger, which will like it won't look as clean and sharp as it could because it's a little low resolution, but for us today, that will be just fine. Now I can, up here in the top part of my toolbar, actually define very clearly its place and its size. So for my size, I'm going to pick width or height. It doesn't matter which one because this chain link is turned on, which means that if I change one of these, it changes the other one proportionally. And I'm going to type in 340. And again, with this clicked on, we can see that it's automatically applying 340 over here. Then I can define the exact place that it's in by typing in an X and Y position. So I can do 7, 3, 5 to determine its horizontal position. And then right here, I want to do 8, 7, 5 for its vertical position. Now, if this isn't automatically converting to pixels, like if it's not in pixels already, you can simply type in pixel. Or if you hit Command R and right click, you can switch to pixels if that's not already there. But this should be defaulting to pixels from the start image. All right, that placement looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and click the check mark or double click or click done or hit enter on my keyboard. It doesn't really matter. All right, so let's remove the background from this image. And we can see that when we added it, my little contextual taskbar right here just goes, oh, you want to remove the background? I'm like, yeah, okay, remove background. And it does a pretty good job, but let's take a closer look at it and see if it did a good enough job. So I'm going to hit Z for zoom tool, or I'm going to click on the magnifying glass over here on the left. And I'm going to zoom in on some of the fur. When I'm zoomed in, I can move my view around by holding down the space bar, which activates the hand tool, which I basically never click on because I'll just use the space bar. That allows me to click and drag to move my view around. And as we look at this dog, we can see that quite a bit of the background is still present in a bunch of the fur. So let's fix that. I'm going to zoom back out, Command 0. And we're going to hop into a very powerful tool called Select and Mask. And we're not going to do a lot in Select and Mask, but we're going to do a little bit. So with the dog layer active, I'm going to come up to Select and go to Select and Mask. Select and Mask is a separate tool that allows me to quickly and easily improve my selections. Let's make it a little bit easier to see what this is going to look like on the beach by coming over here to the far right. And where it says View, I'm going to click this drop down. And I'm instead going to pick on layers, and that will preview what it looks like on the layers that we'll be using for this chapter. We can see it has pretty much the same appearance from before, so let's clean it up a little bit. And we're going to do this with a single button click called Refine Hair. And we can see that that actually does a pretty good job of doing some of the hair. But like if we zoom in again, so I'm holding down Z for zoom tool, you can see that it's introduced some weird kind of distortions up here. So we're going to shrink the selection a little bit to help improve its appearance. So back over here on the right, I have my global refinements. And in global refinements, I'm simply just going to shift the edge by -50. We can see again that that kind of helps clean up that edge a little bit and everything looks a little bit better. Now, if we were doing this in a later chapter, we could use the Refine Edge tool up here to dig in and really try to clean up some of the selection. But for what we're working on today, this actually looks pretty good. Under Output Settings, it should already be defaulting to Layer Mask, but double check that it's saying Layer Mask and click OK. So now we've removed the background from that dog. Now let's give the dog some rad glasses. So let's look at another way of adding the sunglasses to this, different from placed in bed. I'm going to come up to File, and I'm going to go to Open, and I'm going to open up a pair of sunglasses that I snagged from Wikipedia under the CC BY-A license, which means I have to credit where I got it. So it's a user called Ch2 on Wikipedia. Cool, dude. And I'll click Open. Now let's go ahead and do a quick test. So something that's kind of irritating about some of these single button click fixes, so like remove background and select subject and so on, is that they get better. So like as somebody who writes a textbook or makes videos, it means I have to come back and check this every so often to see if it got better, because then I have to update the textbook. So let's see if it got better. So I'm going to go ahead and click remove background. And it has the same problem that it did when I first tested this chapter, which is it's removing that lens, and we want to keep that lens. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Command or Control Z or go up to File Undo to undo that problem. Okay, so like how do we make the selection? So let's take a look at some of our options. So up here in the top left, one tool down, if I click and hold, we can see that I've got the rectangular marquee, the elliptical marquee, and the single row marquee tools. And this is exactly what it sounds like. So it's like click, drag, I've got a box, that's my selection. Cool, not really what I need for this one in this case. Then moving down the tool sets, I have the brush, the lasso, the polygonal, and the magnetic lasso. Now these three right here used to be bread and butter selection tools before this this third set got pretty good. Let's take a quick breeze through them. And then the selection brush one is actually brand new. And how this one works is I just can kind of paint in an area and that will turn into my selection. Next in here, we have the lasso, and this is just a freehand selection. I can draw where I want my selection to be. We'll actually use this here in a few minutes, but it would be kind of awful to try to do the sunglasses like this. We also have the polygonal lasso tool, which is just like the freehand one, except it draws straight lines rather than being pure freehand. This can be very useful for doing like sides of buildings or cleaning up edges. Then we have the one that we probably would have used if we were working on this 20 years ago, which is the magnetic lasso. And this works by clicking and dragging along an edge, and it will automatically drop down these points trying to detect that edge. It does a pretty good job. Like to go all the way around this would take way too long, and we have faster methods now. Moving down the list, we'll go to the fourth tool down, and we've got the Object Select, Quick Select, and Magic Wand tool. Object Select allows you to mouse over something, and it will try to auto-detect it and be like, is this what you want as your selection? It also allows you to draw a box over something, and it'll be like, it'll detect what's in there and try to make that selection, which works pretty good for these sunglasses, honestly. I'm going to drop that selection though. Then we also have the Quick Select tool, which we used in Chapter 1, which allows you to paint over an area to create your selections. This one's pretty good for cleaning up other selections later. Then we also have the Magic Wand, which is really useful for picking large swaths of colors. Like I could use this to select the white background and then add in these areas to make my selection. In this case, the one that works the best is Object Select. So let's grab Object Select, mouse over the glasses until they turn pink like so, and click. And there you go, you have your sunglasses. Isn't that neat? Now to move it over, we're just going to move it like you would move text in Microsoft Word. So I'm just coming up to Edit, and I'll go to Copy. I'll come over to my other image. Again, I'm just clicking between these two tabs, and I'm going to go to Edit, Paste. And there's my sunglasses. Cool. Now I don't need these ones anymore, so I'll just go ahead and close it by clicking on the X. Go away, and click Don't Save. Now the Object Select tool is being pretty obnoxious, so I'm going to switch to the Move tool, which will also allow me to do some quick transformations to these sunglasses. So first things first is I want to flip them. So I'm going to hit Command or Control T on my keyboard to get more advanced transformations, or go up to Edit and go down to Free Transform, and that will open up the Transform tool. It will also change down here, giving us these little flip buttons. You could also do this by coming up to Edit, Transform, and you've got some flips and rotates down here as well. But like do the contextual taskbar because it's just faster. Rotate it a little bit and put it over the dog's face, and that looks a little small, so why don't we make you a little bit bigger? And that looks pretty good to me. It doesn't have to be perfect. And we can play around with the position here in a second and hit Enter to accept that placement, or double click, or again, whatever gives you a giggle. Now we're going to look at layer blending modes more in the next chapter and in later chapters, but we can turn these transparent really easily by coming over to where it says Normal in the layer panel. I've got that sunglasses layer active, and I'm going to click where it says Normal, and I'm going to pick Multiply out of this list. And Multiply just proportionally darkens everything under this layer by that layer. So like we can see that the black right here is staying black, but like that gray turns transparent. And now that I've done that, I'm actually going to bring the glasses over a little bit, and I'm going to use Nudge to move it. So as long as I've got this Move tool active, I can use arrows on my keyboard to move things around. If I hold down the Shift key, it will move by 10 pixel increments. And I think right about there looks pretty good for those sunglasses from where they were at before. Okay, now like this is not bad, but like it could be better because like we have the sunglasses, over the dog's head. And what we want to do is we want to have it tuck behind the head. So if we click these off, we can see we've got all this fur right here, and it would look really rad. Move it over a little bit more. It would look really rad if we kept that fur edge rather than some kind of horrible, clunky, nasty edge. So let's start by making a selection of the glasses. So let's select the glasses. I'm going to hold down Command or well, no, let's not select the glasses. I'm being dumb. First, let's actually reselect the dog because that's what we want for our selection. So I'm going to come down here, and rather than Command click the dog, I'm going to Command click the layer mask. And you can see that that gives me that fur edge right off the bat, which is really cool. Then I want actually the opposite to be selected because right now this would keep this part of the glasses rather than this part of the glasses. So I'm going to invert my selection, and it's really easy to do. I have a button for it right here. Boop. And you can see now that my marching ants are going around the outside and the dog. I could have also gone up to select inverse or use Command-Shift-I to invert my selection. And this looks pretty, so like if I made a layer mask right now, it would look like this. And you can see like we've got that fur edge right here that we want. I'm going to undo that. But we need to keep this part of the sunglasses as well. So I'm going to grab the regular lasso tool, so L for lasso. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So I'm hitting Command or Control plus. Space bar over, so it's a little bit easier for me to grab. And what I need to do is I need to tell Photoshop to keep this part of the sunglasses. So we're going to draw a selection. And when we're drawing the selection, we can be really lazy except in one spot. So like here's what's in the layer, just those sunglasses. So to grab what I need, I don't have to get to this edge. I can stay away from it. In fact, so oops, I forgot a step. We need to come up here to the top and we need to turn on add. So add is exactly what it sounds like, adds to the selection. We have remove, which removes from the selection, and we have intersect, which keeps the part where the two parts overlap. In our case, we want add. I was in new, and I want add. So I'm just going to click right about here, and I'm going to click and drag, and I'm going to be super lazy because there's nothing there around the glasses. It's just transparent pixels. And then this right here is where I need to be careful. So I want to draw a nice, clean, straight line. Now I can be lazy again. I want to make sure I don't accidentally get that little part of the glasses. And then I'm just going to release my mouse, and I've got my selection. Now I'm going to make a layer mask, and that layer mask is going to hide everything that is selected. So the area that is selected is like right here in the, well, I'll show you. Oop. And you can see that it hides all the selected areas. Neat, right? So Command 0, and we now have our sunglasses tucked behind our dog's head. Okay, next we want to add a tennis ball. So let's open up the tennis ball. So I'm going to come up to File, and I'm going to go to Open, and we're going to grab this tennis ball. There you are. And we can see this tennis ball doesn't look great because it's an early AI generation, and so it's not really, it looks like a tennis ball, and it's got some bad fluff on it. So we're going to use a perfect circle selection to remove that fluff. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit first because it always makes your life easier. Command plus or Control plus. And mouse up so it's nice front and center. Holding it down the space bar again to get the hand tool. And now I want to draw a perfect circle selection. Up here in the top left, I'm going to click and hold on the marquee tool and grab the elliptical marquee tool. And again, this does what you would expect. So when you click and drag, you get like an oval selection, and you could try to like line this up and try to make a perfect circle, and it's not going to work. So we're going to modify the way that it draws a selection. So if I hold down the Alt Option key on my keyboard, instead of drawing from the top, it will draw from the center. If I hold down the Shift key, I get a perfect circle. And I'm going to use both of those to make it easier to draw the selection. All right, as I'm doing this, I'm going to say what mouse buttons I'm holding down because we're going to hold down a lot of mouse and keyboard buttons all at the same time. The order that you click them and the order that you release them is going to matter. So I'm going to get my mouse roughly center on the ball, and I'm going to left click and start dragging. Once I start dragging, I'm going to hold down the Alt Option key, and that starts drawing from center. And I'm going to hold down the Shift key as well, So I'm getting a perfect circle. So right now, Alt Option, Shift, and left click are all being held down. I'm going to get it roughly to the right size, and we can see I was a little bit off center, so I want to move this. So to move a selection while I'm making it, I can also hold down the space bar. So I'm holding down space bar now, and I'm going to reposition my selection a little bit. I'm going to release the space bar. I'm going to release the left mouse button, and I'm going to release the Alt, Option, and Shift keys on my keyboard, and now I have my perfect circle selection. This might take you a couple tries to get right. Either make sure you have the new selection button going as you're trying new versions of it, or that you hit deselect between each attempt to get your perfect circle. Once you have your circle, you'll simply click the layer mask button, or you can click it down here to hide the background. Now to move it over to this image, we're not going to copy and paste. Let's take a look at another method. We're going to go to Window, Arrange, and we're going to pick 2 up vertical. And this is going to put both of the documents side by side. We can't see the tennis ball because it's over here to the side, but like that's not going to matter here in a second. So to get the tennis ball to here, we're going to drag its layer over the other image. So right now the tennis ball is active. This has the summer days active, tennis ball, summer days, tennis ball. We want the tennis ball tab active. And I'm going to click here where it says layer 0 and drag over the dog image and then release, and that added my tennis ball. I don't need this anymore, so I'm going to click the X to close it. And if it asks me to save, I don't really need to save it either. Let's move our tennis ball. So V for Move Tool, or you can click the Move Tool up here. And I'm just going to, I don't know, put it right about here for now. Okay, let's go ahead and add the other dog. So to add the other dog, I'm going to use a different method. So I'm going to go to Finder in my case. If you're on a Windows computer, you'll be using File Explorer. I'll go to my desktop and I'll go to where my videos are, my files are at, and I have my other files right here in my system. So then I'm going to click on the image. So here's the one we're adding, Dumb Dog, and we're going to drag it over the image and release, and that will add it to our document. So there's a bunch of ways of adding different images. Okay, let's remove the background on this and get it correctly sized in place. First, let's do the size. So up here at the top where it says 100%, I'm going to do 240. For my X position, let's go ahead and do 985. And for my Y position, I just moved between these 2 boxes, by the way, by hitting the Tab key. Tab key allows you to move between these boxes in order, so you don't always have to click on them, so it's really handy. So I'll do 970 for this one, and that got shifted somehow. You should be 985. There we go. So 985, 970, 240, check mark. Okay, let's remove the background from this guy. So we'll start with the Quick Select tool. And so I'll come here and I'll click and hold, and I'm going to get to Quick Select, and I'm going to click Select Subject. Boop. And you can see that it does a pretty good job of selecting the dog, but not a perfect job. So let's zoom a little bit further in. So Z for Zoom tool and zoom. Release the Z for Zoom tool, and we can see that it missed part of the ear, and it's got some problems down here in the feet. To fix the ear, we'll go ahead and use the Quick Select tool in plus mode. My mouse, by the way, is going to be much larger than yours because, again, I have it zoomed in so it's easier to see. So to do that ear, I'm clicking about here, and I'm going to drag up until I get that ear, and I'm not going to really worry about that feathering there. Now, this is not going to work very well down here because, like, if I switch to minus mode and I try to start removing stuff, I start removing too much. So to remove this little bit of sand kick up, I'm going to come back to my regular lasso, and I'm not going to use add. I'm not going to use new. I'm not going to use add. I'm going to use subtract. So I'll click this third option, and I'm just going to lasso around the part of the selection I want to remove. And there we go. Oops, I took a little too much of the foot off. Maybe I'll come back here and grab add and bring some of that foot back. Yeah, that looks fine. Command or Control 0 to fit back on my screen. Layer mask button. Looks pretty good. All right, finally, let's add a border to our image. Actually, it doesn't make any sense for the ball to be behind her face. Let's go ahead and drag her down. There we go. Now the ball's in front of her face. That makes more sense. All right, let's add a border to our image. To add our border, I'm going to make the very top layer active. And I'm going to click the new layer button right here. It looks like a box with a plus sign in it. And so this is going to be our border. To add it, I'm going to come up to select and go to select all. And that gives me a selection the size of my canvas. I can also do Command or Control A to make that selection. We're going to modify it. So we're going to go to select, modify, and in this case, we're going to pick border. And this is going to kind of do this nice little soft edge thing to this. It'll be neat. For width, I'm going to do 50. And I'll click OK. And we can't see it, but basically there's a soft feathering to the edge of this selection that we'll be able to see once we draw our gradient. So let's go ahead and hit G on our keyboard or click on the gradient tool. And I'm going to left click on the left side of my canvas and hold the Shift key while I'm dragging to the right side and release. And I have my gradient. So that is chapter 2, not super hard. Go ahead and save it. So go up to File and Save. Oops, I just saved over my start file. Should probably actually do a save as, so I'm not being stupid, because I'd want to keep that start file and do done. And this will give me my done file, save. And there we go. So not super hard. All right, for this do-it-yourself, you should use the provided images, which there's more than just these 3. These are the ones that just fit well on the page, to do pretty much the same thing that we did right now. So like you're going to remove the background from dog images, you're going to remove the background from sunglasses and balls and add them to one of the beach pictures that are already here. After you've done that, you should add some sort of text. You should add border to that text, just like what we did in the chapter. And then you should also make a border for your design using kind of the same method, graduation. When adding your text, make sure that it is large and everything's positioned well. So like nothing's kind of running off the page weirdly or like nothing's crowding each other. Try to make it look good in terms of your placements. Anyway, I hope you have fun and see you next time.